And we're live. So, first head count, okay, 8 people. So, thank you all for coming this evening to my presentation. My name is Jessica, for those of you who don't know, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about communication competence. I know the first thing that you might be wondering is, how can being communication competent help me? Well, one of the advantages of being communication competent is helping to make a good first impression. For instance, if you're going to an interview, you'd want to present the best possible version of yourself to your company, your potential company. But communication competence is not just about presenting the best version of yourself. It's also an interaction. It's an exchange between people. So if you're at work and you're all working toward a common goal, you'd want to be able to communicate effectively so that we can all work together and reach that goal. But there's also smaller aspects in life where you'd like to be communication competent, like if you're on the phone with the internet company because your internet isn't working. You'd like to work together towards that goal to get that resolved. But also, I'd like to talk about an incident where I realized that I needed to take a closer look at my own communication competence. So I was working my first job, and I had been there for several years. As my knowledge grew and my skills also grew, I realized that I wasn't being treated respectfully. People still saw me as the butt of their jokes and kind of treated me in a way where I felt insulted. And I was still able to get the work done. I was still able to get promoted to the highest level, but I still wasn't treated in a way where I felt that I deserved. So it made me think, what are the things that I'm doing to communicate to others that I should be treated this way? Of course, that's part of it, is what you give off to other people, things that you are aware of and things that you're not aware of. Other aspects of communication that we sometimes are aware of and sometimes are not would be nonverbal communication. For instance, my hand gestures. Do these signify to you that I am comfortable? They're nonverbal cues. So nonverbal cues can mean a lot of things in different cultures. For instance, we might use this as okay, but in France, they're going to see this as 0. So if you want to signify to someone in France that you're doing well, they might worry about you if you give them this hand gesture. So the next thing I'd like to touch on is the basics of communication. Let's bring it down to as simplified process as we can. So the first step is that we're going to have somebody who wants to send a message. They're going to be the sender of that message. So they come up with something that they want to share with others. They think about it. The next step that they're going to do is send out that message through a channel. Now this channel could be verbal, it could be face-to-face, it could be a text message, it could be a memo, it could be an email. We have a lot of different channels these days. So after they send that message, the receiver is going to receive it, and then the next step after that is they decode that message and they decide what that message is. Once the message is out of the receiver's hands, or out of the sender's hands, after they send that message out, the decoding stage is where they have the least amount of control. So the receiver is going to look at that message, but they're also going to see it through their lens. They have their own perception. So sometimes you'll find communication breakdowns or miscommunications happening at this step because they're perceiving your message through their own lens. That is partially contributed or built of their previous experiences and preconceptions of what you're going to say. So I'd like to give an example of a miscommunication or a communication breakdown that I noticed at my place of work the other day. So I work at a retail pharmacy, for those of you who might not know, and I was watching an interaction. So there was a technician and a patient. The patient brought in 4 bottles, and 3 of those bottles still had tablets remaining. So the technician took in those bottles and handed back the 3 that still had tablets because those still belonged to the patient. The patient was instantly enraged because they couldn't understand that. Why are we handing them back? Does that mean that we're not going to be filling those medications? So as I watched the interaction, I tried to figure out where the communication breakdown was happening before I stepped in. So I heard the patient say, "I don't want to come back just because there's a few pills left in the bottle." And the other thing I noticed was that as the technician was explaining this to him, she didn't realize that he had a hearing aid. So the hearing aid signified to me that this patient is hard of hearing. So when you are experiencing a communication breakdown with someone who is hard of hearing, the first step that you want to do is do everything that you can to show them that you want to help them, that you want a positive experience with them. The second thing is that you're going to need to speak slowly and loudly. And that was exactly what I did. I went over there very calmly, very slowly, very loudly, and with a short message, because he was hard of hearing. I said, "We will still fill these." And it just instantly pacified him, and he was able to receive more of the message at that time. So another thing with communication competence, this leads me into my next point, is that when you're communication competence, it's not one size fits all. So if I'm talking to a patient who is not hard of hearing, do I speak slowly and loudly to them? Absolutely not, because they may interpret this as insulting or that I'm patronizing them or mocking them. So people who are communication competent are adaptable. They can see, how do I treat this person? How do I communicate with that person? Knowing your audience and being able to identify which skills that you need to portray in specific times can help with being communication competent. So another aspect of communication that we may not think about is word choice. So certain words carry certain connotations with them. One aspect that I noticed this in was my oldest son goes to preschool, and we receive daily evaluations of what happened in the day. In the bottom, there's a category that says whether your child had a good day, a fair day, or a hard day. When I saw the word hard, I definitely didn't think that that would be the next one. When you think good, fair, the next option you would think would be bad. And then this made me think about why didn't they use the word bad? They probably don't, to send the right message, they did not want to use the word bad, because that could make us think that you're assigning a negative connotation to your child. Your child is misbehaving, they are bad, they are unruly, versus the word hard, which assigns an intention to the child that the child wanted to do their best, but it was difficult for them. It's a total different approach to viewing your child versus labeling them as good or bad. So, today's trend, most people are reporting that they prefer communication via text, or they're shying away from phone calls and face-to-face communication. And when we think about why that is, so the first aspect, when you send a text or an email or any type of written form of communication, you get to express yourself fully, but then you also get to edit this message before it gets to the person it's intended. You get to read it, you get to proofread it, you can edit it, you can change it before it gets sent to the receiver, so you can manipulate it any way that you would like to get your message out. Because once it's out there, as I mentioned, when the receiver gets the message, you have the least amount of control. Another thing that happens, why people prefer this method over face-to-face interaction, is because when you're having a conversation with someone, you are sending and receiving messages simultaneously.
Mommy.
This is another thing that contributes to communication breakdowns and communication miscommunication, is because when you're having a conversation with someone, sometimes they're not fully receiving your message. They're actually thinking about the next message that they are about to send. So instead of fully receiving your message and decoding your message, they are thinking about the next message that they are getting ready to send. And so if they're not fully receiving your message and then they get upset about that, that is bound to happen when you're not getting your message fully across to the other person. So, to recap, well, not really to recap, but I'd like to end with some closing thoughts about why we would want to be communication competent. Again, this is a versatile skill. It's something that we, as people, we need to interact with other people to obtain achieved desired common goals. If you're calling someone over to get help, if an appliance is broken down and you need to communicate to someone the exact version of your problem so that they know how to best help you. And also we'd like to reduce communication breakdowns. For instance, as I mentioned, in my work in the pharmacy, we're dealing with people on a daily basis, and it is best to know how to communicate with them in a way that will make them happy, but also give them the desired results. They are not feeling well, they need extra empathy, and they need clear communication.
Yes.
So then, this versatile skill can do nothing but aid us in, also I'd like to mention it with our professional goals. When you would like to present the best version of yourself during an interview, how the different nonverbal cues that you might accidentally be giving off, and how to rein those in a way to present the most approachable, knowledgeable, and capable version of yourself when achieving the desired goal of promotion and working well with others. We would definitely like to be communication competent throughout our lives, and we would like to reduce the communication breakdowns when we think about the linear model, of course. So when you give more thought to those linear models in these different stages, how can we be communication effective? So again, in closing, I would like to thank all of you who made it here today. Thank you for coming and helping me with my goals to being communication competent. And I'm going to use my communication competent to realize that this one has some needs that I need to attend to.